On Christmas Eve, she sent, "Look what you lost." But it was her ex's new girlfriend who saw it, triggering a forbidden romance that changed their lives forever. Secrets came to light, and an impossible love blossomed where it was least expected. Get ready, because this story will touch your heart. Subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up, and comment on where you're watching from. The penthouse apartment in Chelsea exuded quiet elegance that Christmas Eve. Through the panoramic windows, the golden lights of New York twinkled like earthly stars, creating an urban mosaic that Sarah Anderson had known by heart for 15 years. The scent of cinnamon and cloves from the Christmas dinner, prepared by Mrs. Smith, her loyal housekeeper, filled the air with a bittersweet nostalgia that tightened her chest. Sarah walked barefoot on the Carrara marble floor, her cold feet contrasting with the warmth radiating from the gas fireplace. At 42, she maintained the proud demeanor inherited from the Anderson family, a lineage of coffee growers who helped build modern New York. Her brown hair fell in perfect waves over her shoulders, framing a face that combined the sophistication of someone who frequented the city's best salons with the determination of a woman who had built her own empire in the world of interior design. "Mrs. Sarah, aren't you going to have dinner?" Mrs. Smith's concerned voice echoed from the gourmet kitchen, where silver trays displayed a lavish table set for just one person. "I'll be there soon, Mrs. Smith. I just need to sort something out," Sarah replied, her voice betraying a vulnerability she rarely allowed to show. In her hands trembled a golden smartphone, the screen illuminating her face with a cold, artificial light. For 6 long months, since Eduardo had left her for a woman 20 years younger, Sarah had fought the urge to contact him. Pride was a family trait. The Andersons did not beg, did not humiliate themselves, did not show weakness. But on that Christmas night, alone, amidst the luxury she had built with her own hands, something inside her broke. Her fingers glided over the virtual keyboard with nervous precision. The message was simple, but loaded with all the resentment and desperation that had accumulated. "Look what you lost." She attached a photo taken at the opening of her new office in Chelsea, her radiant in a navy blue Gucci dress, surrounded by influential clients and luxurious flowers, the perfect smile masking the pain gnawing at her chest like acid. 15 years of marriage. 15 years, she murmured to herself, recalling how she had helped Eduardo build his career as a plastic surgeon, how she had given up international opportunities to be the perfect wife he needed. "And he trades me for some dance teacher from East Harlem." The send button blinked on the screen like an accusing eye. Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the Chanel No. 5 perfume she had worn for decades, the same one she had worn the day she met Eduardo at the medical school graduation party. With a swift movement, before reason could speak louder than emotion, she tapped the screen. Sent. On the other side of the city, in East Harlem, Luana Johnson watched the last rays of golden sunlight filter through the blinds of the 2-bedroom apartment she shared with Eduardo for 3 months. At 29, she possessed a natural beauty that required no high society artifice, curly hair dancing freely over her shoulders, brown skin bearing the marks of someone who grew up playing in the streets, and brown eyes radiating an almost childlike sincerity. Eduardo's apartment was a completely new universe for her. Designer furniture, artwork on the walls, a magazine-worthy kitchen, everything so different from the simple house where she had grown up with her mother, Mrs. Johnson, who worked as a cleaner to support the family after her father abandoned them. "Why do you always leave your phone lying around?" Luana murmured, picking up Eduardo's smartphone that vibrated insistently on the glass coffee table. He was in the shower, getting ready for dinner at his parents' house, a traditional family from the Upper East Side who still treated her with a polite coldness that couldn't disguise their disdain for her humble origins. The screen displayed a message notification. Normally, Luana respected Eduardo's privacy, but something about the timing, Christmas Eve, almost 10 at night, piqued her curiosity. And perhaps, if she were honest with herself, the insecurity gnawing at her stomach for weeks. She knew the story of Eduardo's broken marriage. She knew he had left his wife, a famous and wealthy architect, to be with her. In the beginning, it made her feel special, chosen. But in recent weeks, she had begun to wonder if it was just a phase, a midlife crisis that would pass as soon as Eduardo grew tired of playing with the poor girl from the outskirts. The name on the screen made her heart race. Sarah Anderson. With trembling fingers, Luana unlocked the phone. Eduardo had never hidden the password, another sign of trust that now seemed naive. The message opened, revealing a photo that took her breath away. The woman in the image was stunning in a way Luana had never imagined possible. Not just beautiful, but radiating a sophistication and elegance that seemed intrinsic, as if cultivated over generations. The dress was clearly expensive, the setting luxurious, but what truly caught Luana's attention was something in Sarah's expression. A strength, a determination that shone through even the social smile. "Wow," she whispered, zooming in on the photo with her fingers. "She is amazing." A strange and inexplicable sensation washed over her chest. It wasn't jealousy, at least not the kind of jealousy she expected to feel. It was something more complex, a mix of admiration, fascination, and Sarah felt a deep confusion. How was it possible to feel this way about a woman? About this woman? "Lucy, have you seen my smartphone?" Edward's voice echoed from the bathroom, interrupting her turbulent thoughts. "It's here," she replied, but she couldn't take her eyes off the photo. There was something in Sarah's eyes, a depth that contrasted with the artificial smile. Lucy, who had grown up reading people out of necessity on the streets of East Harlem, recognized pain when she saw it. Edward appeared in the room, his hair still damp, wearing a white dress shirt that accentuated his artificial tan. At 45, he maintained his physique with personal trainers and aesthetic treatments, but he was beginning to show signs of the age he feared so much. "You seem off," he commented, adjusting his tie. "Is something wrong?" Lucy looked at him, then at the smartphone in her hands, then back at him. A decision formed in her mind, impulsive and seemingly illogical. "Edward, I need to meet your ex-wife." He stopped mid-motion, the tie half undone in his hands. "What? Why?" "She sent you a message, a photo." Lucy showed him the screen, watching Edward's expression change from confusion to irritation. "Damn it! Of all days." He took the smartphone, read the message, and huffed. "She can't accept that it's over. She keeps sending these provocations." "It didn't seem like a provocation to me," Lucy said softly. "It seemed sadness." Edward looked at her with an expression she couldn't decipher. "Lucy, Sarah is a very complicated woman. Cold, controlling. She never showed a genuine feeling in 15 years of marriage. Don't be fooled by this victim image." But Lucy couldn't shake the contrast between the luxury of the photo and the vulnerability she sensed behind the perfect pose. Growing up in East Harlem had taught her to see beyond the masks people wear, and something told her there was much more to Sarah Anderson's story than Edward was telling. "Still," she insisted, surprising herself with the determination in her own voice. "I want to meet her." On the other side of the city, Sarah remained motionless in front of the window, watching New York prepare for Christmas. The message had been sent, but the relief she had hoped for did not come. Instead, she felt even emptier, as if she had played her last card in a game that had long been lost. Mrs. Smith approached discreetly, carrying a tray with hot chocolate and French toast. "Mrs. Anderson, you need to eat something, and maybe it would be better not to be alone tonight. Why don't you call Mrs. Brown?" Helena had been her best friend since college, one of the few people who had stayed by her side during the divorce. "No, Mrs. Smith, I'm fine like this." Sarah took the cup of hot chocolate. feeling the comforting warmth in her hands. "You can go home, be with your family. I'm just going to stay here and reflect a bit." "But Mrs. Anderson—" "Please, Mrs. Smith, I need to be alone." The maid sighed but obeyed. Sarah heard the door close softly, leaving her alone with the luxurious silence of her penthouse. The apartment that once represented the pinnacle of her success now felt like a golden mausoleum, beautiful and empty like her life. She looked again at the smartphone, waiting for a response that would probably never come. Edward would certainly ignore the message, as he had done with all the other discreet attempts at contact. But something inside her, an intuition she couldn't explain, whispered that this time would be different. What Sarah didn't know was that, at that very moment, the dance teacher who had stolen her husband was looking at her photo with an expression of fascination she never imagined was possible, and that this desperate message, sent in a moment of weakness, would be the first step of a journey that would completely change her understanding of love, of herself, and of what truly matters in life. The Plaza Hotel shone in all its golden glory that New Year's Eve, its lights reflecting on the dark waves of the world's most famous beach. Sarah Anderson was staying in the presidential suite with her two best friends, Helena Brown, an heiress from an industrial family, and Patricia Smith, a renowned gallery owner in the New York art scene. The trio had decided to escape New York for the festive celebrations in Miami in an attempt for Sarah to start the new year away from painful memories. "You need to stop checking your smartphone every 5 minutes, Helena said, adjusting her Mikimoto pearl necklace while watching Sarah in the reflection of the Baroque mirror in the room. Helena, at 40, maintained the cool elegance typical of someone who had never had to fight for anything in life, but her blue eyes showed genuine concern for her friend. Sarah was sitting on the suite's balcony, wearing a turquoise sundress that highlighted her green eyes. The sea breeze lightly tousled her hair, but she seemed oblivious to the beauty around her, hypnotized by the screen of her phone. "It's been 5 days since that stupid message," Sarah murmured, more to herself than to her friends. "He didn't even bother to respond. 15 years of marriage and I don't even deserve a screw you." Patricia, applying blood-red lipstick in front of the mirror, sighed dramatically. "Sarah, darling, you need to understand that ignoring you is the best revenge this mediocre man can come up with. Don't give him that pleasure." "Patricia is right," Helena agreed, sitting next to Sarah. "You built an architecture empire. You're internationally recognized. You have everything any woman could want. Why are you diminishing yourself because of this half-baked plastic surgeon?" Before Sarah could respond, her smartphone vibrated. Her heart raced at the sight of an unknown number, but when she opened the message, she almost let the device slip from her hands. "Hello, Sarah. My name is Lucy Santos. I am Edward's girlfriend. I know it may seem strange, but I really want to talk to you. I believe we both deserve some clarity. If you agree, I can meet you wherever is best for you." The silence that followed was deafening. Helena and Patricia exchanged glances, clearly expecting Sarah to explode in indignation. Instead, she reread the message 3 times, her expression shifting from disbelief to a dangerous curiosity. "Don't tell me you're considering it," Patricia said, approaching with wide eyes. "Sarah, it's obvious this is a trap. That girl wants to humiliate you, to rub it in your face that she won." "No," Sarah said slowly, analyzing each word of the message. "The tone is different, polite, almost respectful." She paused, recalling the strange feeling she had on Christmas Eve, as if something important was about to happen. "I'm going to accept." "Sarah!" Helena practically shouted. "Have you lost your mind? This is pure masochism." But Sarah was already typing a response, her fingers moving with a determination that surprised even herself. "Lucy, I accept your invitation to talk. I will be in New York next Monday. Do you know Joe's Coffee on Broadway? Let's meet there at 3 p.m. 5 days later, Sarah was sitting at one of the back tables at Joe's Coffee, a place she had strategically chosen. Busy enough to avoid scenes, but discreet enough for an intimate conversation. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the constant noise of traffic on Broadway, creating an urban atmosphere that always calmed her. She had arrived 15 minutes early, a strategy learned in business. Always control the territory. She wore a charcoal grey Armani suit that conveyed authority without being ostentatious, and she had chosen understated jewelry to avoid intimidation. Although she wouldn't admit it, she was more nervous than she had been in years. When Lucy walked into the coffee shop right at 3 p.m., Sarah felt as if the air had been sucked from her lungs. The photo of Edward did not do justice to the girl's real presence. Lucy had an aura of authenticity that was almost palpable. Curly hair pulled into a casual bun, wearing a white cotton blouse and dark jeans that accentuated her athletic silhouette. She wore no makeup beyond a clear gloss, and her brown eyes radiated a sincerity that Sarah rarely found in her social circle. "Sarah?" Lucy asked hesitantly, approaching the table. Her voice was soft, with a slight East Side accent that betrayed her origins. "Yes, Lucy, I presume." Sarah stood up, extending her hand in a formal greeting. Lucy's handshake was firm, but her palms were slightly damp with nervousness. They sat across from each other, the initial silence heavy with tension. Lucy ordered a simple cappuccino, while Sarah opted for a double espresso. As they waited for their drinks, they studied each other with the caution of two warriors assessing their opponent. I didn't know how to start this conversation," Lucy finally said, her hands nervously fiddling with a colorful beaded bracelet on her wrist. "In fact, I still don't really know why I wanted to talk to you so much." "Out of curiosity, I imagine," Sarah replied, her voice controlled but not hostile. "It's natural to want to know about the past of someone you love." Lucy shook her head. "It's not just that. When I saw your photo in that message, I felt something I can't explain. You looked sad. Even while smiling, your eyes were sad." The observation caught Sarah off guard. She was used to being seen as a successful, cold and calculating woman. No one had noticed her vulnerability in years, much less a stranger 20 years younger. "And why would that bother you?" Sarah asked, genuinely curious. "Because," Lucy hesitated, clearly struggling to find the right words. "Because Edward always talks about you as if you were a bad person, cold, selfish, without feelings. But the woman I saw in that photo wasn't that person, and I wanted to know what the truth was." Sarah felt something shift inside her chest, an emotion she couldn't immediately identify. "And what conclusion did you reach?" "That he lied about a lot of things," Lucy said with a frankness that left Sarah momentarily speechless, or at least that he never really knew you. The waiter arrived with their drinks, interrupting the moment. Sarah took the pause to process Lucy's words. There was something deeply disturbing, yet liberating, about hearing from someone that she wasn't the monster Edward painted her to be. "Can I ask you a question?" Sarah said after taking a sip of her espresso. "Of course. Do you really love him?" Lucy fell silent for a long moment, stirring her cappuccino absently. "I thought I did. Edward offered me security, stability, things I've never had. My mother cleans houses to support me. I teach dance at a small studio. When he came into my life, it felt like a fairy tale. But," Sarah sensed there was more, "but the more time I spend with him, the more I realize I'm not a person to him. I'm a trophy, proof that he is still virile, desirable." Lucy looked directly into Sarah's eyes. "And no matter how hard I try, I can't stop thinking that if he did this to you, someone he knew for 15 years, what guarantees do I have that he won't do it to me?" Sarah felt a pang of something that could be compassion or recognition. "And why don't you break up with him?" "Because I'm scared," Lucy admitted with brutal honesty. Scared of going back to the life I had before. Scared of disappointing my mother, who finally has something to be proud of in her daughter. Scared of finding out that I'm too weak to achieve something better. Lucy's raw sincerity created an opening in the emotional armor that Sarah had built over the months. She found herself wanting to comfort this young woman who, under different circumstances, should have been her enemy. "Lucy," she said softly, "you are 29 years old, beautiful, intelligent, and from what I can see, Marina was braver than she imagined. Why would you settle for crumbs? And you?" Lucy asked, flipping the script. "Why did a woman like you settle for being a trophy wife for 15 years? The question hit Marina like a punch to the stomach. She had never thought of her marriage in those terms, but now, hearing her own words echoed back by this insightful young woman, she realized the painful irony of the situation. "Touché," Marina murmured, a bitter smile curving her lips. "It seems we have both been victims of the same man, just at different times." "Maybe," Lucy said, "but at least now we know the truth." They remained silent for a few minutes, each lost in her own thoughts. The cafe buzzed with activity around them, but within their private bubble the world seemed to have stopped. "Marina," Lucy finally said, "can I ask you a strange favor?" "Sure. Could you tell me what it was really like to be married to him? Not the version he tells, but the truth." Marina looked at the young woman she should hate, but who was awakening completely unexpected feelings in her. Protection, admiration, and something deeper that she dared not name. And for the first time in months, she decided to be completely honest. The street festival in New York was in full swing that Saturday in February. Greenwich Village was buzzing with energy, transforming its bohemian streets into an explosion of colors, music, and contagious joy. Sarah Anderson walked through the crowded streets, feeling completely out of her usual element. 2 weeks had passed since her first meeting with Lucy at Joe's Coffee, a meeting that had stretched for 3 hours and ended with a hesitant hug and the young woman's phone number saved in her smartphone. Since then, they had been texting daily, conversations that started about Edward and evolved into increasingly personal topics. "You should go out more. Live life," Lucy had written the night before. "I bet you've never been to a street festival." And she was right. Marina only attended the traditional balls at the Pinheiros Club or private parties of the New York elite. The idea of mingling with the masses had always seemed vulgar to her, a prejudice she now recognized as part of the golden bubble she had lived in for decades. She wore a simple white top and a floral midi skirt, the closest she could get to a casual outfit. She had spent an hour in front of the mirror, trying on different looks, until she accepted that she would never look like a regular person. Her hair was down, swaying to the rhythm of her uncertain steps on the uneven pavement of the village. "Marina!" Lucy's voice cut through the noise of the crowd. She turned and felt her heart race. Lucy was dressed as a carnival reveler in a flowing golden-yellow skirt that accentuated her brown skin and a white top that showed off her shoulders. Colorful beaded necklaces adorned her neck, and a red flower was tucked into her curly hair. She radiated genuine joy, as if the festival coursed through her veins. "You actually came," Lucy said, approaching with a radiant smile. "I thought you would back out at the last minute." "I almost did," Marina admitted, shouting to be heard above the sound of drums and tambourines. "This is intense." "It's wonderful." Lucy grabbed her hand without hesitation, pulling her closer to the music. "Come on, I'll introduce you to my friends." Marina let herself be guided, aware of the warmth of Lucy's hand in hers and the contagious energy radiating from the young woman. They joined a group of people Lucy's age. Teachers, artists, professionals. Everyone greeted her warmly, without the forced reverence or calculated interest she was used to in her social circle. "Guys, this is Marina, the amazing architect I told you about," Lucy shouted to her friends. Marina blushed upon realizing that Lucy had spoken about her to others, and even more when she noticed that she hadn't mentioned her connection to Edward. It was as if, in that moment, she was simply Marina, not the betrayed ex-wife, not the heir of the Andersons, just a woman in the crowd. The march, "I Want My Mommy," exploded from the music stage, and the entire crowd moved like a human wave. Marina, accustomed to the controlled movements of traditional dance halls, felt lost in the frenetic rhythm of the street festival. "Relax," Lucy said in her ear, her hands positioning themselves on Marina's waist. "Feel the music, don't think too much." Lucy's touch sent an electric jolt down Marina's spine. She had never danced so close to another woman, never felt this kind of physical intimacy that wasn't sexual but somehow felt more intimate than sex. Their bodies moved together, finding a common rhythm, and Marina was surprised to let herself go. "You dance well," Lucy murmured, her lips close to Marina's ear. Her breath smelled of cold beer and pure joy. "You guide me well," Marina replied, feeling her own defenses crumble with each beat of the drum. As the afternoon progressed, Marina found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't experienced in years. She drank beer from plastic cups, ate street food, laughed loudly at silly jokes, and danced until her feet ached. But the most unsettling thing was how safe and happy she felt next to Lucy, as if she had found a place where she could be herself without judgment. When the sun began to set, painting the sky of Greenwich Village in golden and pink hues, the festival moved towards Washington Square Park. Marina and Lucy sat on the edge of a fountain, exhausted but euphoric. "Thank you for today," Marina said, brushing a strand of hair stuck to her sweaty forehead. "I haven't had this much fun in years." "Why did you stop?" Lucy asked, sipping her beer. "From having fun, I mean." Marina reflected for a moment. "I think I never really started, actually, since as a child I learned that fun was something for people without responsibilities. My family, we didn't have fun. We fulfilled social obligations." "How sad," Lucy said with genuine sincerity. "Everyone deserves to have fun. And you? How did you learn to live so lightly?" Sarah asked, observing Lucy's animated face under the golden light of the sunset. "Necessity," Lucy laughed, but there was a shadow in her eyes. "When you grow up without guarantees, you learn that happiness cannot be postponed. There may not be a later." "Tell me about your childhood," Sarah requested, realizing she wanted to know every aspect of Lucy's life. Lucy fell silent for a few seconds, playing with her beaded necklaces. "I grew up in East Harlem. My mother, Johnson, raised my sister and me alone after my father left us when I was 8. That must have been tough." "It was, but it was also beautiful," Lucy said with a nostalgic smile. "My mother worked as a cleaner in 3 different jobs to support us. She left home at 5 in the morning and returned at 9 at night. But on weekends, she would turn up the music, make a big pot of stew, and dance with us in the living room. She said that a rich family had money, but a poor family had joy." Sarah felt a pang of envy. "My mother never danced with me. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen her dance." "That's a shame," Lucy said softly. "Dancing is one of the few things in life that is pure joy." "Is that why you teach dance?" "Yes." Lucy's eyes lit up. "I teach at a small studio here in the neighborhood. It's nothing luxurious, but I love seeing people discover that they can move, that they can be free, even if just for a few minutes." "Could you teach me?" Sarah asked impulsively, then blushed at the boldness of the question. "Of course." Lucy jumped from the fountain, energized by the idea. "Whenever you want." "Now?" Lucy looked at her in surprise. "Here, in the middle of the square?" "Why not? You said dancing is pure joy." "I want a bit of that joy." Lucy extended her hands, pulling Sarah back to her feet. "Okay, but I warn you that my style is quite different from your classical dance studios." "Great. I'm tired of the classical." They positioned themselves in the middle of the square, ignoring the curious glances of other revelers. Lucy placed her hands on Sarah's waist again, but this time the touch was different, more intimate, more intentional. First, you need to feel the music not just with your ears, but with your whole body, Lucy instructed, her voice low and close. Close your eyes. Sarah obeyed, aware of every point of contact between their bodies. She could feel the warmth radiating from Lucy, the soft scent of her shampoo mixed with the aroma of her skin. "Now breathe with me," Lucy whispered, "and move." They began to move together, not exactly dancing, but swaying to the distant rhythm of a samba echoing from a nearby bar. Sarah felt transported, as if she were floating. She had never experienced such an intense physical connection, and at the same time, so innocent. When she opened her eyes, she found Lucy watching her with an expression she couldn't decipher. There was something there, admiration, tenderness, and perhaps something more. "Sarah," Lucy said hesitantly. What is it?" "Nothing." Lucy shook her head, stepping back slightly. "It's just that you are very different from what I imagined." "Different how?" "More real, more human." Lucy smiled shyly. "Edward always talked about you as if you were a marble statue, cold, perfect, untouchable, but you are nothing like that." Sarah felt a strange emotion stirring in her chest. "And how am I?" "Caring, funny, brave," Lucy paused, "and very, very lonely." The observation hit Sarah like an arrow to the heart. She had spent decades building an image of a strong, independent woman, but Lucy had managed to see through all that armor in just a few weeks. "Lucy, Sarah began, but couldn't finish the sentence. There was something happening there, something she didn't fully understand, but that attracted and terrified her at the same time. "I know," Lucy said softly, as if she could read her thoughts. "I'm feeling it too." They stood still in the middle of the square, the street festival continuing around them like a colorful whirlwind. But within their private bubble, a silence reigned, heavy with possibilities. "This is crazy," Sarah murmured, more to herself than to Lucy. "Maybe," Lucy agreed, "but sometimes crazy is the only thing that makes sense." The sound of fireworks exploding in the sky brought them back to reality. The block party was ending, and people were starting to disperse. Sarah realized she had just crossed an invisible line, but she wasn't sure which line it was, or if she wanted to go back. "I should go," she said, although every fiber of her being screamed to stay. "Sure," Lucy agreed, but there was disappointment in her voice. "I'll walk you to a taxi stand." They walked in silence through the now emptying streets, each lost in their own thoughts. When they reached Broadway, Sarah turned to say goodbye and found herself lost in Lucy's brown eyes. "Lucy," she said impulsively, "do you want to have dinner with me tomorrow? Somewhere more calm?" The smile that lit up Lucy's face made Sarah's heart skip a beat. "I would love to." March arrived in New York with its melancholic afternoons and the unmistakable smell of wet earth from the first autumn rains. Sarah was in her office in Chelsea, watching the raindrops slide down the panoramic windows while trying to focus on the projects spread out on her glass desk. But her mind was miles away, lost in the events of the past few weeks. The dinner with Lucy had turned into several dinners, which in turn became lunches, walks in Central Park, and long phone conversations that... As the night stretched on, Sarah found herself more confused about her own feelings with each meeting. There was something about Lucy that attracted her magnetically, her spontaneity, her ability to find beauty in simple things, her genuine laughter that echoed through the darkest corners of Sarah's soul. "Mom," the voice of Ryan, her assistant and only confidant at the office, pulled her from her daydreams. He was a 28-year-old architect, a graduate of Columbia, openly gay, and the only person who dared to question her when necessary. "Are you okay? You've been staring at that rain for an hour." Sarah turned, noticing the genuine concern in Ryan's brown eyes. She had called him Mom since he started working at the office 3 years ago. a joke born from her protective tendency toward younger employees. "Ryan, can I ask you a personal question?" He raised his eyebrows, surprised. Sarah rarely mixed personal life with work. "Of course, Mom. Always. What was it like for you? Discovering you were gay. When did you know?" Ryan sat down in the chair across from her desk, his expression shifting from surprise to careful understanding. "Why the question?" "Answer first." He sighed, crossing his legs. "I always knew, deep down, since childhood, but it took me years to accept because my family is evangelical, very traditional. It was a long process of self-discovery and acceptance." "And how was it? The first time you felt attracted to another man?" "Confusing," Ryan said honestly. "Scary. It felt like everyone I knew had turned upside down." He paused, studying Sarah's face. "Mom, do you want to tell me what's going on?" Sarah stood up and walked to the window again, her hands trembling slightly. I think I'm feeling something for a woman." The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of rain against the glass. When Sarah turned, she found Ryan with a look of genuine surprise. "Wow," he finally said. "That's unexpected." "Unexpected?" Sarah laughed bitterly. "Ryan, I'm 42 years old. I was married for 15 years to a man. Never, not for a second, did I question my sexuality. And now I can't get this woman out of my head. When I'm with her, I feel a connection I've never felt even with Edward. It's as if she knows me in a way that no one has ever bothered to know." Sarah pressed her palms against her temples. "Am I going crazy?" "No," Ryan said softly, standing up and approaching her. "You're discovering who you really are, and that can happen at any age. But my family, Ryan, my family would never accept this. My mom would die if she knew." Mrs. Anderson, matriarch of the Anderson family, was known for her conservative opinions and her intolerance for anything that strayed from the traditional standards of high society in New York. At 70, she still presided over charity events for the Catholic Church and considered Sarah's divorce a stain on the family reputation. The phone rang, interrupting the conversation. Ryan answered with his usual efficiency. "Sarah Anderson's office. One moment, please." He covered the receiver. "It's Richard Smith from Smith Developments. He says it's urgent." Sarah sighed and picked up the phone. Richard was one of her most important clients, responsible for multi-million-dollar projects. "Richard, how are you?" "Sarah, we need to talk, urgent." His voice was tense, formal. "Can it be now?" "Sure. What happened?" "I'd rather discuss it in person. I'm coming up." The line went dead. Sarah looked at Ryan with a growing sense of apprehension. 15 minutes later, Richard Smith burst into the office like a hurricane. He was a 50-year-old man, robustly built, known for his brutal frankness in business. His face was flushed with contained anger. "Sarah, sit down." "Do you want coffee?" "I don't want coffee, Sarah. I want explanations." He remained standing, his hands resting on her desk. "There's a very strange rumor going around about you." Sarah's stomach dropped. "What kind of rumor?" "That you're getting involved with women, specifically with your ex-husband's ex-girlfriend." Richard looked her in the eyes. "Tell me this isn't true." Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. How did you find out?" "Jesus Christ, Sarah!" Richard exploded. "So it's true. Richard, this has nothing to do with my work." "Nothing to do?" He laughed bitterly. "Sarah, you work with the elite of New York, traditional conservative people. Do you think they'll accept a lesbian architect designing their homes?" "I'm not—" Sarah started, then stopped. "I don't know what I am." "Well, you'd better figure it out quickly because I've already lost 2 clients today. The Johnsons cancelled the country house project, and the Thompsons decided to rethink the penthouse renovation." Each word was like a punch to Sarah's stomach. She had worked 15 years to build her reputation, to be respected in a male-dominated market, and now, because of a few meetings with Lucy, everything was threatening to crumble. And there's more, Richard continued relentlessly. Your mum called me today. She wants a meeting with you tomorrow. Said she needs to set some things straight. Sarah sank into her chair, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. Does my mum know? Everyone knows, Sarah. You've been seen in various places with that girl. New York may be big, but our society is small. Ryan, who had been watching the confrontation in silence, stepped forward. Mr. Smith, with all due respect, Sarah's personal life shouldn't affect her professional quality. Whether it should or shouldn't is irrelevant, Richard replied coldly. The reality is that it does. Sarah, you have to choose your career or this phase. After Richard left, the office fell into a deadly silence. Sarah remained seated, staring at the project plans that represented years of hard work. Mum, Ryan said softly, you can't let them do this to you. It's not. That's how simple it is, Ryan. Sarah sighed deeply. I built my entire life on certain expectations. My family, my career, my social standing, everything depends on me being who they expect me to be. And who are you really? Doesn't that matter? Before Sarah could respond, her smartphone rang. It was Lucy. Hi. Lucy's cheerful voice contrasted painfully with the chaos that Sarah's life had become. Lucy, I can't talk right now. Is everything okay? You sound strange. Sarah looked at Ryan, who gave her an encouraging gesture. Lucy, we need to meet. There are some things we need to discuss. Sure, where? At our usual coffee shop, 1 o'clock? I'll be there. Sarah hung up and turned to Ryan. I need to end this before it completely destroys my life. Mom, Ryan said with a sadness she rarely saw in his young eyes, are you sure it's your life you're saving, or the life that other people want you to live? An hour later, Sarah was sitting at Joe's coffee, watching Lucy approach with her usual radiant smile. Today she wore a simple yellow sundress that highlighted her brown skin and curly hair pinned back with a colorful clip. She was the picture of joy and spontaneity, everything Sarah felt she was losing. Hi, beautiful, Lucy said, kissing both of Sarah's cheeks before sitting down. How was your day at the office? Lucy, we need to stop seeing each other. The smile instantly vanished from Lucy's face. What? This, whatever it is that's happening between us, it can't continue. Sarah forced her voice to remain steady, even though each word was painful. It's affecting my professional life, my family. Sarah, what are you talking about? People are talking about us. My clients are cancelling contracts. My mum wants to see me tomorrow for a serious talk. Sarah avoided looking into Lucy's eyes. I can't lose everything I've built. Lucy was silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was low and controlled. And what exactly have you built, Sarah? My career, my reputation. No, Lucy interrupted. What you've built is a gilded cage, where you play a role that you haven't truly been for so long that you've forgotten who you really are. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Lucy stood up, her eyes shining with contained tears. I understand that you're choosing the approval of people who never truly cared about you, over discovering who you could be if you were free. Lucy, please. No, Sarah. I'm not going to beg someone to choose me. I grew up with nothing, but at least I know who I am. Lucy grabbed her bag. When you figure out who you really are, reach out to me. Until then, I wish you happiness in your perfect prison. Sarah watched Lucy leave the coffee shop, each of her steps feeling like a piece of her own soul being torn away. She sat alone for over an hour, staring at the cup of cold coffee in front of her, feeling the weight of the choices she had just made. Outside, the March rain continued to fall over New York, washing the streets of the city, but nothing could wash away the feeling that Sarah had just made the biggest mistake of her life. The Anderson mansion on the Upper East Side stood as imposing as ever, its neoclassical columns and meticulously maintained gardens representing 3 generations of tradition and conservatism. Sarah parked the Porsche Cayenne in front of the wrought iron gate, taking a deep breath before facing her mother. April had brought with it a dry chill that penetrated to the bone, mirroring the ice she felt in her stomach. Mrs. Brown awaited her in the sitting room, sitting upright in her Louis XV armchair, her gloved hands resting in her lap. At 70, she maintained the haughty posture of someone who had never questioned her place in the world. Her grey hair was impeccably styled, and she wore a navy blue Chanel suit that cost more than many people's annual salaries. "Sarah, sit down," Mrs. Brown said without preamble, her voice carrying the icy authority that Sarah had known since childhood. The room's atmosphere hadn't changed in decades. Antique furniture, baccarat crystal, Persian rugs worth a fortune. Sarah sat in the armchair opposite her mother, suddenly feeling like a child about to be reprimanded. "I imagine you know why I called you here," Mrs. Brown began, removing her reading glasses and meticulously cleaning them. "The rumors about your behavior have reached my ears through various sources." "Mom, don't interrupt me." Mrs. Brown's cutting tone made Sarah lean back in her chair. "First, your scandalous divorce, which was already embarrassing enough for the family. Now this, an Anderson getting involved with women, with a dance teacher from the neighborhood." Each word was a calculated blow. Sarah felt the anger rising in her chest, but years of conditioning kept her silent. "Do you have any idea what this means for our name, for our position in society?" Mrs. Brown stood up, walking to the window that overlooked the garden. "3 generations of the Anderson family built this reputation. Your grandfather was a state advisor. Your father presided over the Federation of Industries, and you want to throw it all away for a whim." "It's not a whim," Sarah said softly, surprising herself with her voice. Mrs. Brown turned sharply. "How?" "I said it's not a whim." Sarah stood up, facing her mother's cold gaze. "And Lucy is not a dance teacher from the neighborhood. She is a smart, brave woman who works hard to support her family." "Lucy," Mrs. Brown practically spat the name. "You're telling me you know this person by name?" We, Sarah stammered, realizing she had revealed more than she intended. "Good God!" Mrs. Brown sank into the armchair, dramatically placing her hand on her chest. "It's worse than I imagined. You are really involved with this woman." "Not anymore," Sarah murmured, the pain of separation still fresh like an open wound. "Ah, then there is hope." Mrs. Brown perked up slightly. "You ended this madness." "I ended it because—" Sarah paused, struggling to find the right words. "Because I realized I couldn't disappoint the family." "Very wise." Mrs. Brown nodded approvingly. "Now we need to work on repairing the damage. I will call Monsignor Johnson to schedule some Thanksgiving masses. Perhaps a generous donation to the church will help calm the spirits. Mom, I don't need religious forgiveness." "Of course you do," Mrs. Brown exploded. "You need much more than that. You need a respectable husband to restore your reputation. By the way, I spoke with Albertina Smith. She has a widowed nephew, a serious businessman who might be interested." Sarah felt nausea rising in her throat. "Are you already arranging a marriage for me?" "Someone needs to think about your future, since you clearly lost your senses." At that moment, Sarah understood with crystal clarity what Lucy had been trying to tell her. She truly lived in a gilded cage, where every movement was orchestrated by others' expectations. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city in East Harlem, Lucy was facing her own battles. The house where she grew up was simple but tidy, with furniture that had seen better days but was lovingly maintained. The smell of coffee and cinnamon rolls coming from the kitchen couldn't mask the tension that hung in the air. Mrs. Johnson, 55 years old, grey hair pulled back in a tight bun, was sitting at the kitchen table with a look of despair that Lucy had never seen before. Her hands, calloused from decades of cleaning other people's homes, trembled slightly as she held a rosary. My daughter, Mrs. Johnson said with a choked voice. Tell me that what they are saying isn't true. Lucy sat at the table, avoiding her mother's gaze. Since breaking up with Sarah a week ago, she had taken refuge in her childhood home, trying to process her own confusing feelings. What are they saying, Mom? Mrs. Thompson stopped me at the market today. She said you were getting involved with a woman, with the ex-wife of Dr. Edward. Mrs. Johnson made the sign of the cross. Please, daughter, tell me it's a lie. Lucy's silence was answer enough. Mrs. Johnson lowered her head, whispering prayers under her breath. Mum, it's not what you think. It's not? Mrs. Johnson lifted her eyes, red from held-back tears. Then explain to me, Lucy. Explain how my daughter, raised in the ways of the Lord, got involved in something like this. It's not something like this, Mom. It's feelings. Feelings? Mrs. Johnson stood up abruptly, nearly knocking over her chair. Wrong, sinful feelings. I raised you to be a proper woman, to start a family, to give your mother grandchildren. And who says I can't have a family? Family how, Lucy? With another woman? That's not family, that's an abomination. Mrs. Johnson was shouting now, her voice echoing through the small house. What did I do wrong? Where did I go wrong in your upbringing? Lucy felt her heart breaking. Seeing her mother, who had always been her strength, crumbling because of her, was one of the worst feelings she had ever experienced. Mom, you didn't do anything wrong. I did, Mrs. Johnson sobbed. If I didn't, then where did this come from? From your father? Was it that cursed man who abandoned us? It didn't come from anywhere, Mom. I just am this way. No, Mrs. Johnson shouted, slamming her hand on the table. You are not this way. You are my daughter, raised in the fear of the Lord. This is the devil's work, daughter. It's temptation. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Mrs. Johnson, the neighborhood gossip, who entered unannounced as she always did. Mrs. Johnson, dear, I came to see how you are. Oh, Lucy, you are here. Mrs. Johnson's tone was laden with false concern and genuine curiosity. Mrs. Johnson, now is not a good time, Lucy said politely. I imagine it isn't, Mrs. Johnson replied, sitting down uninvited. With all this mess you've made. Mrs. Johnson, did you know that Lucy lost more than half of her students at the academy? The mothers don't want a person like that teaching their daughters. Lucy's blood ran cold. What do you mean? Oh dear, didn't you know? Mrs. Johnson seemed to be enjoying the drama. Mrs. Thompson withdrew her 3 daughters, and Carmen also pulled Jessica out. They say they don't want bad influence for the girls. Lucy felt the world spinning. The academy in Greenwich Village was her main source of income. Without the students, she wouldn't be able to support herself, let alone help her mother with the bills. And there's more, Mrs. Johnson continued relentlessly. Pastor Benjamin said he will hold a special prayer service for your soul on Sunday. It seems the news has even reached the church. Mrs. Johnson let out a groan of despair. My God, what a shame. How will I step into the church knowing that everyone is talking about my daughter? Mom! Lucy tried to approach, but Mrs. Johnson pulled away. Don't touch me now, Lucy. I need to think. I need to pray. Mrs. Johnson headed to the bedroom, stopping at the door. And you should pray too, daughter. Pray that God removes this curse from you. When the bedroom door closed, Lucy found herself alone with Mrs. Johnson, who watched her with a mix of pity and morbid satisfaction. Lucy, Mrs. Johnson said with false kindness, you are still young. You can repent, ask God for forgiveness, find a good man and start a family. You don't have to insist on this life of perdition. It's not a life of perdition, Lucy murmured, but her voice was weak. It is, daughter, and you know that deep down in your heart. After Mrs. Johnson left, Lucy was alone in the silent kitchen. Through the window, she could see the simple houses of the neighborhood where she grew up, the familiar movement of the streets she knew like the back of her hand. Everything seemed the same, but she knew that nothing would be the same again. Her smartphone rang. It was David, the owner of the gym where she worked. Lucy, I need to talk to you urgently. Can you come here tomorrow morning?" She already knew what the conversation would be about. Her career, just like Sarah's, was being destroyed by the prejudices of a society that did not accept differences. That night, both Sarah and Lucy slept poorly, each in her own prison. One gilded, the other concrete, but both equally oppressive. And both wondered if the love they had felt for each other was worth all the pain it was causing, not just for them, but for everyone they loved. May arrived with a biting cold that seemed to reflect Sarah's emotional state. Her penthouse apartment in the Upper East Side, once a refuge of elegance and sophistication, now felt like a frozen mausoleum. The plants that Lucy had admired during her visits were beginning to wilt from lack of care, mirroring Sarah's own state of mind. "Sarah, you need to get out of this," said Mrs. Brown, watching her friend absent-mindedly sift through the projects spread out on the coffee table. 2 weeks had passed since her last conversation with her mother, and Sarah had become a shadow of herself. "Patricia is right," agreed Mrs. Brown, who was sitting in the Italian leather armchair, her legs crossed elegantly. "You are withering away because of this situation. You need to move on." Sarah lifted her eyes from the architectural drawings, noticing how her friends were watching her with a mixture of concern and impatience. "I'm trying to focus on work." "Did work?" Patricia laughed bitterly. "Sarah, you lost 3 important clients this month. Ryan told me you barely leave the office, and when you do, you wander around the city like a lost soul." It was true. Since breaking up with Lucy, Sarah felt lost in her own life. She tried to take refuge in her projects, but she found that even her work had lost its luster. The designs seemed empty, devoid of the passion that had always characterized them. "Listen," said Mrs. Brown, leaning forward with a conspiratorial air. "I have a solution for your problem. Remember August Thompson? He has been a widower for 2 years, owns a prosperous construction company, and has a 19-year-old daughter studying in Europe." "Mrs. Brown, please." "No, let me finish. He asked about you last week at the country club. He said he has always admired you and would like to get to know you better." Mrs. Brown smiled with satisfaction. "It's perfect, Sarah. He is respected, has money, and you both move in the same circles." Sarah looked at the photo Mrs. Brown was showing on her smartphone. A man with grey hair, a friendly face, and a well-tailored suit. August Thompson represented everything her family considered ideal: stability, tradition, respectability. "He wants to take you to dinner at the Four Seasons tomorrow night," Patricia added. "A civilized date, no pressure." "I'm not ready." "When will you be?" Mrs. Brown asked bluntly. "Sarah, you are 42 years old. You can't spend the rest of your life lamenting over a phase." The word phase echoed in Sarah's mind like a painful echo. That's how everyone viewed her feelings for Lucy. A phase, a temporary deviation from normalcy. Maybe they were right. Maybe she could return to the life she knew, to the patterns she had always followed. "Fine," she finally said, her voice sounding empty even to her own ears. "I'll accept the dinner." On the other side of the city, in East Harlem, Lucy was facing her own pressures. The conversation with David at the gym had been as devastating as she had expected. With the loss of more than half of the students, he had no choice but to temporarily let her go. "It's nothing personal, Lucy," he had said, avoiding her gaze. "But the parents are concerned, you understand. Maybe when things calm down." Now unemployed and facing the coldness of her mother, who had barely spoken to her in weeks, Lucy received an unexpected offer. Carla, her childhood friend who had moved to Miami 2 years earlier, called with a proposition. "Lou, there's an opening for a dance teacher at the school where I work," Carla said over the phone, her voice filled with forced enthusiasm. "It's a great opportunity for you to start over, to get out of this whole situation." Lucy was sitting in her mother's backyard, watching the flowers that Johnson tended to with such care. Even in the midst of the family crisis, the plants continued to be watered religiously every morning. "Miami is far, Carla." "Exactly. It's far from all these problems, from all this gossip. You can have a fresh start, meet new people. Carla paused significantly. Meet a nice guy, start a family. Carla? Lou, I'm serious. No one here knows your story. You can go back to being who you always were. And who was I always? A sweet, normal girl who always dreamed of having a husband and kids. Lucy closed her eyes, trying to remember that version of herself that Carla described. It was true that before Sarah, she had followed a traditional script, dating neighborhood boys, vague plans of marriage and family. But now, after experiencing the intensity of the feelings she had with Sarah, all of that seemed pale and lifeless. Can I think about it? Of course, but don't take too long. The position is good and there are other candidates. That night, Lucy had dinner in silence with her mother for the first time in weeks. Johnson had finally come out of her room, but the atmosphere between them remained icy. I received a job offer in Miami, Lucy finally said, breaking the silence. Johnson stopped eating, looking up with interest. In Miami? A dance school. Carla arranged it for me. And are you going to accept? Lucy studied her mother's face, searching for signs of hope or sadness. Do you want me to go? I want you to be happy, daughter, and to be the girl I raised again. And what if I can't? What if this part of, who am I really? Johnson sighed deeply, appearing to have aged years in just a few weeks. Then you will have to choose between being who you think you are and having a family that loves you. The unspoken ultimatum hung in the air between them. Lucy understood that her mother was offering a chance for redemption, but the price would be denying a fundamental part of herself. Meanwhile, at the Four Seasons, Sarah faced her own attempt at redemption. August Thompson was exactly as Helena had described, a gentleman, polite, interesting. He spoke about travel, business, and art. He was precisely the type of man she should find attractive. "You're very quiet today," he observed, delicately cutting into his salmon. "Is everything okay?" "Sorry, August, I've been a bit distracted lately." "I understand. Divorce is always hard." He smiled understandingly. "I went through the same thing when my wife passed away. It takes time to adjust to life alone." Sarah nodded, forcing a smile. August was kind, respectful, everything a woman could want. So why did she feel so empty? "Sarah," he said, leaning slightly over the table, "I know this might be sudden, but I would really like to get to know you better. Maybe we could have dinner again next week." Sarah hesitated. This was her chance to get back on track, to reclaim the life she once knew. "Yes, I would love to." August's satisfied smile should have made her happy, but all she felt was a growing emptiness in her chest. That very night in her empty apartment, Sarah looked at herself in the bathroom mirror. The woman she saw there seemed strange. Perfect makeup, impeccable hair, designer dress. It was the Sarah Anderson everyone expected to see, but she felt as if she were wearing a costume. She picked up her smartphone, her fingers hesitating over Lucy's name in her contacts. How many times in the past few weeks had she started to type a message only to delete it before sending? In New York, Lucy was also facing a choice that would define her future. Carla's offer was an escape route, a chance to start anew away from all the pain and confusion. But it would also mean giving up any possibility of winning Sarah back, of fighting for the love she had found. "Carla," she said on the phone, "I accept the position." "Great, you won't regret it, Lou. A new life awaits you here." But even as she spoke the words, Lucy felt as if she were betraying some essential part of herself. And somewhere in the city, Sarah was doing the same, accepting a future that felt safe but seemed like a lie. Both had chosen security over truth, social acceptance over authenticity. But the universe has a peculiar way of not letting true love stories end so easily. East Harlem was transformed for the local church's summer festival. Colorful flags crossed the dirt streets. Wooden stalls exuded the irresistible smell of corn pudding, sweet corn pudding, and hot spiced drink, and the sound of Sebastian's accordion echoed through the neighborhood's central square. It was a Saturday night at the end of June, and the entire community had gathered for the year's most traditional celebration. Sarah parked her luxury car 3 blocks from the festival, knowing that the vehicle would draw unnecessary attention. 2 months had passed since she accepted August Thompson's proposal, 2 months of elegant dinners, operas at the Metropolitan Opera House, and social events where she played the role of the perfect companion. But with each passing day, she felt further away from herself. She wore a borrowed outfit, a blue and white plaid skirt, a white cotton blouse, and a neck scarf, an outfit she had bought at a popular shop after searching for summer festival outfits on Google. She felt strange, out of place, but determined. The last few weeks had been a painful journey of self-discovery. Ryan, concerned about her emotional state, had suggested she see a psychologist. Dr. Sarah Collins, a 50-year-old woman specializing in identity and sexuality issues, had helped Sarah understand aspects of herself she had never questioned. Sarah, Dr. Collins had said in the previous week's session, you can spend the rest of your life trying to fit into molds that others have created for you, or you can have the courage to discover who you really are. But what if I lose everything? And what if, in trying not to lose anything, you end up losing yourself? The question echoed in her mind as she walked through Lucy's neighborhood. For weeks, she had discreetly investigated Lucy's life, uncovering details about her childhood, her family, her world. She knew that Johnson worked as a cleaning lady in 3 different houses, that Lucy had grown up in a 2-bedroom house with her mother and sister, and that she had learned to dance by watching library DVDs. The more she discovered about Lucy, the more she admired her strength and authenticity, and the more ashamed she felt of her own cowardice. The festival square was filled with people. Whole families had come out to celebrate, children running between the stalls, teenagers shyly flirting, elderly couples dancing traditional dances with movements they had known for decades. Sarah had never experienced such a genuine and warm community. "Are you lost?" a middle-aged woman asked, noticing Sarah's confused expression. "Actually, I'm looking for Lucy Smith." "Do you know her?" "Of course. Lucy lives right over there." The woman pointed to a row of simple houses across the square. "But she's here at the festival. She's helping at the church booth." "Are you her friend?" "I am. Or I was," Sarah replied honestly. "Oh, then you must be Sarah," the woman exclaimed, her eyes lighting up with recognition. Sarah was shocked. "You know me? Lucy talked a lot about you. After she came back from New York." The woman stopped abruptly, realizing she had said too much. "Well, she's over there at the booth with traditional foods." "From New York?" Sarah asked, confused. "Oh no, forget what I said. Are you going to look for her or not?" With her heart racing, Sarah headed towards the indicated booth. She found Lucy serving sweet corn pudding to a line of children, dressed in a summer festival outfit that made her look even younger and more beautiful. Her curly hair was tied with colorful ribbons, and she laughed with genuine joy at the children's antics. "Aunt Lucy, can I have more condensed milk?" asked a boy of about 7. "Just a little more, or your mum will get mad at me," Lucy replied, making a funny face that elicited giggles from the kids. Sarah stood a few meters away, watching. This was the Lucy she had fallen in love with, natural, caring, able to find joy in the simplest situations, and she had thrown that away out of fear. "Sarah!" Lucy's voice cut through her thoughts. The young woman had finally noticed her, and her expression shifted from surprise to something Sarah couldn't decipher. "Hi," Sarah said simply, approaching the booth. What are you doing here?" Lucy asked, handing the last plate of sweet corn pudding to a child before turning fully to Sarah. "I wanted to talk to you. Can I?" Lucy hesitated, looking around the bustling festival. "I'm working at the booth." "Lucy, go talk to your friend," interrupted Mrs. Smith, an elderly woman with grey hair who was helping at the booth. "I'll take care of things here for a while." "Thank you, Mrs. Smith." Lucy stepped out from behind the booth, and they walked to a more secluded area of the square where some wooden benches offered a bit of privacy. "You look different," Lucy observed, noticing Sarah's simple outfit. "And thinner. Are you eating properly?" The genuine concern in Lucy's voice made Sarah's heart tighten. "Not really, actually." They sat on one of the benches, the sounds of the festival creating a distant soundtrack for their conversation. "Lucy, I made a terrible mistake," Sarah began, struggling to find the right words. "When I broke up with you, I thought I was protecting my life, my career. But I realized that without you, none of it makes sense." "Sarah," Lucy started, but Sarah interrupted her. "Let me finish, please. I've spent the last 2 months trying to go back to my old life. I went out with a wonderful, respectable man, exactly what everyone expected me to do. But with every dinner, every kiss, I only thought of you. How your laughter was more beautiful than any music. How I felt complete when I was with you." Lucy remained silent, nervously fiddling with the hem of her plaid skirt. "I know I don't have the right to ask this after hurting you, but—" Sarah took a deep breath. "Do you still feel anything for me?" The silence stretched for long seconds. When Lucy finally spoke, her voice was choked. "Sarah, you have no idea what I went through after you broke up with me. I lost my job. My mom stopped talking to me. I was ostracized from my own community." Lucy looked up and Sarah saw tears there. "I even accepted a job offer in Miami to escape all of this." "In Miami?" Sarah remembered the woman's comment at the entrance of the festival. "I left for a month. I thought that if I got out of New York, I could forget you, go back to being who I was before." Lucy laughed bitterly. "But you know what I discovered?" "What?" "That there is no before you, Sarah. You changed something fundamental in me. You showed me that I could feel a love that goes beyond gender, beyond social conventions. And when I tried to pretend that didn't exist, I felt dead inside." Sarah felt hope growing in her chest. "So you came back?" "I came back 2 weeks ago. I told my mom that I'd rather live being rejected for who I really am than accepted for who I'm not. And her, she's trying to understand. It's hard for her, raised in such a conservative generation, but she said she loves me no matter what." Lucy smiled through her tears. "I think mothers have a capacity to love that goes beyond our prejudices." "Lucy," Sarah said softly, "I want to try again. I want to fight for us, even if it means facing the whole world." "Sarah, are you sure? Because I won't go through this again. If you're not completely certain of who you are and what you want, it's better to stop here." Sarah took Lucy's hands, feeling the comforting familiarity of her touch. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I love you, Lucy. I love your strength, your authenticity, your ability to find beauty in everything. And I'm ready to be brave enough to deserve that love." The kiss that followed was gentle, filled with forgiveness and promises. Around them, the summer festival continued, but they were in their own world, rediscovering the connection that no social pressure had managed to completely destroy. "Sarah," Lucy whispered when they pulled apart, "are you sure you're ready for the consequences? Because this time it won't be easy to hide." "I don't want to hide," Sarah said with a determination that surprised them both. "I want everyone to know that I'm a woman in love with another extraordinary woman." Mrs. Johnson appeared at the edge of the square at that moment, looking for her daughter. When she saw Lucy and Sarah together, their expressions intertwined, she stopped abruptly. For a long moment, mother and daughter looked at each other across the distance, a silent conversation passing between them. Then, to Sarah's surprise, Mrs. Johnson nodded slightly, not in complete approval, but in loving resignation, and perhaps, just perhaps, at the beginning of an acceptance that would take time to fully blossom. "Come on," Lucy said, getting up and extending her hand to Sarah. "I want to introduce you to my community, and I want to dance with you in front of everyone." Sarah took her hand, feeling for the first time in months that she was in the right place, being who she truly was. Together, they walked back to the party, ready to face any challenge that the future might bring. The Municipal Hospital of East Harlem smelled of the familiar hospital aroma of disinfectant and worry. Sarah walked through the corridors with a bouquet of wildflowers in her hands, her steps echoing on the ceramic floor as she searched for Mrs. Johnson's room. 3 weeks had passed since the summer festival, and this would be her first real meeting with Lucy's mother. "Room 307, she murmured to herself, checking the number written on her hand. When she reached the slightly open door, she took a deep breath before knocking softly. "Come in," came the weak voice from inside the room. Mrs. Johnson was lying on the hospital bed, looking smaller and more fragile than Sarah had imagined. Her grey hair was spread out on the pillow, and her brown skin had a sickly pallor that contrasted with the vibrancy Lucy had described. "Mrs. Johnson, I'm Sarah, Lucy's friend." Johnson's eyes fixed on Sarah with a mix of curiosity and caution. "I know who you are. Lucy has talked a lot about you." Sarah approached hesitantly, placing the flowers in an improvised vase made from a plastic bottle someone had left on the nightstand. "How are you feeling?" "Tired," Johnson replied honestly. "My kidneys aren't functioning as they should. The doctors say I need regular dialysis now. Lucy told me. That's why I came to talk to you." Sarah pulled up a plastic chair and sat down beside the bed. "I want to help with your treatment." Johnson studied her for a long moment. "Why? You don't even know me." "Because I love your daughter, and I know how much you mean to her." "Love," Johnson repeated the word, as if testing its taste. "I'm still trying to understand how two women can love each other like that." Sarah chose her words carefully. "Mrs. Johnson, can I tell you something? I didn't understand either. I spent 42 years of my life thinking I knew all the ways to love, but when I met Lucy, I discovered that love has no rules. It just happens." "And your family? Do they accept this situation?" Sarah laughed bitterly. "No. My mother threatened to disown me. I lost some friends, some clients. But you know what I discovered? The people who abandoned me for this never truly loved me." Johnson remained silent for a few minutes, processing the words. "Lucy cried a lot when you two broke up the first time. I've never seen her suffer so much, not even when her father left." "I suffered too," Sarah admitted. "It was the biggest mistake of my life. And now, are you sure you won't run away again when things get tough?" Sarah looked directly into Johnson's eyes that were a more tired version of Lucy's. "Mrs. Johnson, yesterday I cancelled a $2 million contract because the client said he didn't want a lesbian designing his house. I lost money, prestige, but I didn't lose sleep. Do you know why? Because for the first time in my life I'm being who I really am." An almost imperceptible smile passed over Johnson's lips. "You have courage, girl. I respect that." "I want to earn your respect in other ways, too," Sarah said, pulling an envelope from her pocket. "I spoke with my private doctor, Dr. Henry Smith. He is a nephrologist, one of the best in New York. He wants to examine you to see if he can improve your treatment. I can't afford a private doctor. It's all arranged. I also managed to transfer you to Mount Sinai Hospital, where they have more modern equipment for dialysis." Johnson was taken aback. "Why would you do this for me?" "Because I want to take care of the family of the woman I love. Because I discovered that true love means taking care not just of the person, but of everything that is important to them." Tears began to roll down Johnson's face. "Sarah, I don't know how to thank you." "You don't need to thank me. You just need to take care of yourself and get better. Lucy needs you." At that moment, Lucy entered the room carrying homemade meals, stopping abruptly upon seeing Sarah there. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" "I came to meet your mother," Sarah replied, standing up, "and to talk about some things." Lucy looked between the two women, noticing the tears in her mother's eyes and Sarah's determined expression. "What happened?" "Your girlfriend," Johnson said, using the word for the first time without hesitation. just gave us a very big gift." As Sarah explained the medical arrangements, Lucy felt an overwhelming emotion taking over her chest. No one had ever cared for her family like this. "Sarah, this must cost a fortune." "Money can be earned, Lucy. Family can't be bought." Sarah took her hand. "Besides, I have a proposal for both of you." "What kind of proposal?" Johnson asked, her previous suspicion replaced by curiosity. "I want to open a community dance school here in the neighborhood, with Lucy as the educational director." Sarah pulled out some papers from her bag. "I've already found a lot. Talked to the City Hall about tax incentives. It will be a free school for children and teenagers in the community." Lucy looked at the architectural drawings that Sarah spread out on the bed. They were detailed plans for a modern building with spacious dance studios, changing rooms, and even a small theater. "Sarah, this is amazing, but—" "No buts, Lucy. This project is not charity. It's an investment. I believe in your talent, in your ability to transform lives through dance." Sarah pointed to different areas of the project. "Here we will have classes in classical dance, contemporary, street dance, foro, everything you want to teach." "And the money to build this?" Johnson asked, always practical. "Part comes from my personal assets, part from a loan that I've already approved at the bank, and part from a partnership with the City Hall. The project will pay for itself through performances, workshops for other communities, and eventually some paid classes for those who can afford it." Lucy was speechless, looking at the drawings as if they were a dream materialized on paper. "But there's one condition, Sarah." Mrs. Johnson filled the room, blending with the aroma of coffee that always permeated the space. "Lucy," Sarah began hesitantly, "can I ask you a serious question?" "Of course, always." "How do you imagine our life in 5 years?" Lucy stopped eating, studying Sarah's face. "Why the question?" "Just curiosity." "Well," Lucy reflected for a moment, "I imagine the school running at full steam, transforming the lives of the children in the neighborhood. I see you recognized not only as a great architect, but as someone who uses your profession to make a social difference." She smiled shyly. "And I imagine us in our own house, maybe with some kids running around the yard." "Kids?" Sarah asked, trying to keep her voice casual. "Yes, I know we've talked about this before, but I've always dreamed of being a mother. And after I met you, I started dreaming about us building a family together." Lucy paused. "Why? Did you change your mind?" "No," Sarah said quickly. "In fact, it's exactly the opposite." She stood up, walked over to the office safe, and retrieved a small envelope. When she returned, she handed it to Lucy with her hands trembling slightly. "What is this?" "Open it." Lucy opened the envelope and pulled out a medical test. Her eyes scanned the paper quickly until she found the line that would change their lives. Result: positive for pregnancy. Silence stretched for long seconds. Lucy stared at the paper as if she couldn't believe what she saw. "Sarah," she finally whispered, "does this mean you are—" "Pregnant. 7 weeks." Lucy jumped out of her chair, knocking over the lunchbox in the process, but she didn't care about the food scattered on the floor. She wrapped Sarah in a hug so tight it almost lifted her off the ground. "Oh my God, Sarah, we're going to have a baby." "We are," Sarah confirmed, feeling tears of joy streaming down her face. "Are you happy?" "Happy?" Lucy pulled back to look into Sarah's eyes. "I'm ecstatic. When did you find out?" "I took the test this morning." "You're the first person to know." "And how are you feeling? Physically, I mean." "A little nauseous, tired, but Dr. Henry said it's normal." Sarah touched her belly. "Lucy, this child is going to be born with so much love." "It's going to be the most loved child in the world," Lucy agreed, placing her hand over Sarah's. "Boy or girl? It's still too early to know, but I don't care. Neither do I." Lucy smiled through her tears. "Sarah, I love you. I love our growing family. I love you too, more than I ever thought it was possible to love someone." They remained embraced for several minutes, processing the magnitude of the moment. Outside, New York continued its frantic pace. But there in the office, time seemed to stand still. "Lucy," Sarah finally said, "there's one more thing I need to tell you." "What?" "I spoke with a lawyer last week about us getting legally married. I know it's not officially called marriage, but I can adopt you as a dependent, and you can adopt the baby when it's born." Lucy was speechless again. "You want to marry me? I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want us to be a real family, legally recognized." Sarah took a small velvet box from her pocket. "Lucy Smith, will you marry me?" Inside the box were 2 simple gold rings, without the ostentatious diamonds Sarah used to wear, but beautiful in their simplicity. "Yes!" Lucy shouted, bouncing like a child. "1,000 times yes!" As Sarah slipped the ring onto Lucy's finger, Ryan reappeared at the door, drawn by the noise. "Sorry to interrupt, but I heard shouting and Jesus Christ!" He saw the scene, the 2 embraced, the rings, the pregnancy test on the table. "Did everything happen at once?" "Ryan," Sarah said, her face radiating happiness, "you're going to be the best man." "Best man?" He looked confused between the 2. "For what?" "For our baby," Lucy explained, showing the test. Ryan needed to sit down. "You 2 are going to give me a heart attack. First a wedding, now a baby." "Life is just beginning for us," Sarah said, intertwining her fingers with Lucy's. "And we want you with us on this journey." "Always," Ryan said, emotional. "I will always be with you." That afternoon, as they planned the simple wedding that would take place at the dance school, Sarah reflected on how her life had completely transformed. A year ago, she was a wealthy but empty woman, trapped in social conventions that suffocated her. Now, pregnant with the woman she loved, building projects that transformed entire communities, she felt complete for the first time. "Sarah," Lucy said, gently caressing her belly, "our child will grow up knowing that love has no limits, that family is built with choice and dedication, not just blood. And will grow up proud of their 2 mothers," Sarah added. "Proud to be part of a love story that challenged prejudices and triumphed. The future stretched before them full of possibilities, the dance school that would transform hundreds of lives, the architectural projects that would bring dignity to underprivileged communities, and a child who would grow up surrounded by revolutionary love in its authenticity. The house in East Harlem was unrecognizable. Sarah had bought a simple 3-bedroom house on the same street where Lucy grew up, and transformed it into a cozy home that blended her refined taste with the warmth she had learned to value. The walls, painted in warm colors, housed both contemporary artworks and drawings made by the children from the dance school, creating a perfect harmony between the 2 worlds they now shared. It was Christmas Eve, exactly 1 year after the message that changed their lives. Sarah, 6 months pregnant, moved through the kitchen with the grace of someone who had found her place in the world. Her round belly stood out under the emerald green dress she had chosen for the occasion, simple yet elegant, reflecting the balanced woman she had become. The familiar smell of cinnamon and cloves filled the air, but now it mixed with the homemade spices that Lucy had learned from Mrs. Johnson. The large, solid wood table, a wedding gift from Ryan, was being prepared to welcome both families, a gathering that just a year ago would have been unthinkable. "Honey, let me help," Lucy said, entering the kitchen wearing a red dress that accentuated her curly hair, now longer and tied up with a delicate arrangement of natural flowers. She proudly wore her wedding ring, a symbol they had earned the right to flaunt after an intimate ceremony at the dance school, surrounded by the community that had embraced them. "You don't need to. I'm almost done." Sarah smiled, unconsciously stroking her belly. "Our daughter is quiet today. I think she's also eager to meet her grandmothers." Yes, they had discovered it would be a girl. Sophia, a name they chose together because it means wisdom. Little Sophia, who was growing in Sarah's womb, was already the center of their universe. planned with so much love that even the doctors were moved during the ultrasounds at the sight of both mothers' dedication. "Have the mothers arrived?" Sarah asked, adjusting the final details of the Christmas decorations. "My mom is resting in the bedroom, still recovering from the last dialysis session. She's much better, thanks to the care you provided." Lucy approached, hugging Sarah from behind and resting her hands on her belly. "And your mom? She should arrive any moment now. I still can't believe she agreed to come." The reconciliation with Mrs. Anderson had been a long and painful process. Initially, the matriarch of the Anderson family had threatened to completely disown Sarah when she learned of the marriage and pregnancy. But when she saw the articles in the newspapers about the social work her daughter was doing in the neighborhood, when she realized how Sarah had found professional fulfillment beyond money, something changed. The last straw was when Mrs. Anderson, putting aside her own pride, decided to secretly visit the dance school. Hidden behind sunglasses and a scarf, she watched a class taught by Lucy and saw dozens of underprivileged children being transformed by music and movement. She saw her daughter explaining architectural concepts to young people in the community, inspiring a new generation to dream of professions that once seemed unattainable. "Sarah," Mrs. Anderson had said in the call that changed everything, "maybe I was wrong about many things." The doorbell rang, interrupting Sarah's thoughts. She took a deep breath, straightened her dress, and went to open the door. Mrs. Anderson was at the gate, elegant as always, in a beige linen suit, but there was a softness in her eyes that Sarah hadn't seen in decades. She carried a large bag and seemed nervous. "Mom," Sarah said, opening her arms. "Daughter," Mrs. Anderson replied, returning the hug with rare emotion. When they pulled away, their eyes immediately went to Sarah's belly. "How is my granddaughter?" The simple question carried so much weight. Acceptance, love, forgiveness. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "She's great. Want to feel?" Mrs. Anderson hesitated for just a second before placing her hand on her daughter's belly. At that moment, Sophia kicked as if she knew she was meeting her grandmother. "Oh my God," Mrs. Anderson whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "She's strong. Like the mother and grandmothers," Lucy said, appearing beside Sarah. "Mrs. Brown, it's so good you came." "Lucy," Mrs. Anderson said formally, but without coldness. In recent months they had met a few times, building a cautious bridge of mutual respect. "Thank you for including me in the celebration." "You are family now," Lucy said simply, and Sarah saw her mother swallow hard with emotion. Ryan soon arrived, carrying gifts and his characteristic smile. At 31 now, he had become the perfect godfather, already organizing the baby's room with the precision he applied to architectural projects. "The most beautiful future mothers in New York," he declared theatrically, kissing both of their cheeks. "And the most elegant grandmother," he added, greeting Mrs. Anderson with genuine warmth. Mrs. Johnson appeared from the living room, walking slowly but smiling. The medical treatment provided by Sarah had worked wonders. She was stronger, healthier, and had developed a deep gratitude for her daughter-in-law that never turned into dependency. "Mrs. Johnson," Mrs. Anderson said politely. It was the first time the two mothers had met, and the tension was palpable. "Mrs. Anderson," Mrs. Johnson replied with equal formality. The two women studied each other for a moment, coming from completely different worlds, united only by the love they felt for their daughters and the granddaughter on the way. "Your daughters have built something beautiful," Mrs. Anderson finally said, breaking the ice. "Yes," Mrs. Johnson agreed, a genuine smile appearing on her face. "And our granddaughter will grow up surrounded by so much love." "Come on," Sarah intervened, guiding everyone to the table. "Let's have dinner. We have so much to be thankful for this year." The Christmas dinner that followed was a harmonious blend of traditions, the sophistication of the dishes that Sarah had learned in her aristocratic upbringing, mixed with the simple and flavorful recipes from Mrs. Johnson. Mrs. Anderson tasted the special stuffing from her close friend, while Mrs. Johnson discreetly admired the fine china that Sarah had brought from her penthouse apartment in the Upper East Side. "Sarah," Mrs. Anderson said during dessert, "I brought something for you." She opened the large bag and pulled out an antique wooden box. "These were your grandmother's jewels. Your great-grandmother gave them to her when you were born, so they would be yours when you had a daughter." Sarah carefully opened the box, revealing a delicate set of a necklace and pearl earrings. "Mom, I can't accept." "Of course you can. Sophia is an Anderson, no matter how she was conceived. She deserves to wear the family jewels." "How beautiful," Lucy whispered, gently touching the pearls. "And for you, Lucy," Mrs. Anderson continued, pulling another package from the bag, "I brought something too." It was a childhood photo album of Sarah, photos showing a girl too serious for her age, always posing perfectly, but with a sparkle in her eyes that Lucy recognized. "I want you to meet the Sarah I created, to understand why it was so hard for me to accept her change. And I want Sophia to know the mother she will have." "Mrs. Brown," Lucy said, moved. "Thank you. That means a lot to me." "It means a lot to me too," Mrs. Brown admitted. "You have taught me that love can be many things I never imagined." Johnson, not wanting to be left behind, stood up and returned with a small package. "I brought something too. It's simple, but..." Inside was a handmade doll with curly hair like Lucy's, dressed in a little blue dress. "I made it for Sophia. I used scraps from the clothes Lucy wore when she was little." Sarah held the doll with reverence. It was simple, made with love and dedication, representing everything her daughter would inherit from Lucy's family: simplicity, authenticity, unconditional love. "It's perfect," Sarah said. "Sophia will love it. And when she grows up," Johnson continued, "I will teach her to make her own dolls. Every girl needs to know how to create with her own hands." Ryan, watching the scene with tears in his eyes, raised his glass of wine. "A toast!" Everyone lifted their glasses, wine for some, juice for those who couldn't drink alcohol. "To love that overcomes prejudice, to families formed by choice, and to little Sophia, who will grow up knowing it's possible to be who you really are." "Cheers," everyone said in unison. After dinner, they sat in the living room decorated with a Christmas tree that blended Marina's traditional ornaments with handmade ones made by the school children. The conversation flowed naturally now, the initial barriers dissolved by the warmth of the occasion and the unifying presence of Sophia, who continued to move in Sarah's belly as if she wanted to join the celebration. "You know," Mrs. Brown said, watching Sarah and Lucy intertwined on the sofa, "when I found out about the pregnancy, I confess I was worried. What would it be like for Sophia growing up in a different family?" "And now?" Sarah asked. "Now I see she will grow up in a family full of love, surrounded by people who chose her even before she was born. What better difference could there be? She will grow up knowing that love doesn't have a single form," Lucy added, stroking Sarah's belly. "That family is who cares, who loves, who is present, and she will grow up proud of her two mothers," Johnson said firmly, "because you two are proof that it's possible to fight for your dreams and win." Later, when the guests had left and they were alone, Sarah and Lucy sat on the porch of the house, watching the Christmas lights twinkling through the neighborhood windows. The warm December air carried the scent of the approaching rain. "Can you believe it's been a year?" Sarah asked, leaning on Lucy's shoulder. "It feels like a lifetime, and at the same time, it feels like it was yesterday." Lucy kissed the top of Sarah's head. "Do you regret anything?" "Not at all," Sarah replied without hesitation. "I lost some things, money, status, a few friends, but I gained so much more. You, our family, a true purpose in life. I found myself." I also found myself through you, Lucy whispered. You showed me that I could dream bigger, that I could make a difference in people's lives. Sophia kicked at that moment, as if she wanted to remind her mothers of her presence. I think she agrees, Sarah laughed. Sarah, Lucy said, becoming serious, thank you for being brave enough to find us at that summer festival, for fighting for our dreams when I wanted to give up. Thank you for teaching me that true love is worth any sacrifice, for showing me that it's possible to build a life based on authentic values. They sat in silence for a few minutes, processing the incredible journey they had taken together. From the bitterness of a message on Christmas Eve to the deep love they now shared, from social rejection to building a new family, from loneliness to the feeling of completeness. You know what I'm going to teach, Sophia? Sarah finally asked. What? That sometimes the best things in life are born from moments of greatest pain, that true love always finds a way, and that being different is not a weakness, it's a strength. And I will teach that family is built with love, that it's possible to change the world one person at a time, and that your two mothers are proof that miracles exist. In the distance, the church bells rang midnight, announcing Christmas. Sarah and Lucy kissed softly, feeling Sophia move between them, as if she wanted to seal the moment with her presence. The love that had begun as a message of despair had transformed into the source of the greatest happiness of their lives. And as they watched the stars over New York, they knew their story was just beginning. A love story that defied conventions, overcame prejudices, and created a family based on authenticity, mutual respect, and the certainty that true love is always worth any struggle.